Hi, I'm University Helasos from 2ITB and I'm going to discuss the public class student. For the public class student, we use private keyword as an access modifier used for attributes, methods, and constructors, making them only accessible within the declared class. So we have private integer ID set to 0, private string first name, private string last name, and private string course. Public student as a default constructor, and for the parameterized constructor, we use public as an access modifier and student as the constructor name, same as the class name. Since we have the specific number of parameters, integer ID, string first name, string last name, and string course. To refer to the class field, this.id equals ID, this.first name equals first name, this.last name equals last name, and this.course equals course. We use this keyword to refer to the current object in a method or constructor. For the getters, we use public as an access modifier and return this keyword to return the value of ID, first name, last name, and course from a method.
So here in our program, we have the setters for our student class. We have public void set ID, int ID, and under that is this.id is equal to ID. So this performs in this program. This would perform or set the information, or the user can set the required ID. In our setter, we have the public void set first name, which is the first name is a string. So this dot first name is equals to first name. So in this, the first name will be able to be set when the user has input or need to set their first name. Next is public void last name, which is another string for our program. So in this code, we have this that last name equals last name. So this code is able to set the required last name if the program asks for it. And of course, our public void set course, which is another string. We have under that we have this that course equals course. So this program enables to set the course. So in ID automation, we have public void ID, ID++, and it will show or it will print the student ID plus this ID which will be set, which has been set by the user or input by the user. Next is the public string to string. So because we have to get the information given, we have the code here or the program here to show and get the student ID. Of course, it will print the student ID plus the get ID, which the get here enable us to get the information input by the user, full name, and get first name, which will get the first name info that has been input by the user, get last name, course, and get course. Next is public void line. So in here, this just shows the print line to divide the printed details that will be shown in the program. So next is the public void menu. So in here, at first it will print out the menu word, then it will show the options inside the menu. So we have here the create new student record. If the user choose to create new subject record, if the user selects 3, they will select and list a subject to a student. If they choose number 4, remove a subject from a student. If they choose number 5, display details of a student. Number 6, display all details of all students. And if they choose 7, display all student details enlisted in a selected subject, which will get into the other class and to the details that we've set in the program that we have in setters here. So user will allow the program to exit. Then in the last line of the program here in the class student, it will simply print out the statement that shows select an option.
So for the subject class, for the class fields, we use a private integer subject ID equals 0, private string subject name, and private integer units. For the default constructor, we use a public as the access modifier, and then the name of the constructor is subject. For the parameterized constructor, we use a public as the access modifier and subject as the name of the constructor. We use a parameterized constructor because we have a specific number of parameter, which is integer subject ID, string subject name, integer units, and we use the this keyword to refer the class fields such as this dot subject ID equals subject ID, this dot subject name equals subject name, this dot units equals units. And for the getters, we use public as the access modifier, then we use integer get subject ID, and we use this keyword for the class fields, this dot subject ID. For the get subject name, use a public string, then also we use this keyword to refer to the class field subject name. The same as the subject name and subject ID, we use the public as the access modifier in the units, then use this keyword to refer to the class fields units. And for the setters, we use the public as the access modifier and void because it has to do something. Then we set the subject ID and its parameter constructor integer subject ID. Then we also use this keyword to refer to the class fields, this dot subject ID equals subject ID. And for the same as the subject name, we also use the public void and use a parameterized constructor which is string subject name. And for the set units, we also use the public void. Then we also use these keywords to refer to the class fields units. And for the methods, for the ID automation, we use access modifier public, and we use the void because it has to do something, and the name of the methods is subject ID. We use the void because it has to do something, and it's automatically adds the ID to 1, then print it. And to print it, we use the system dot out dot print student ID plus this dot subject ID. And for the method to string, use public string as the access modifier. Then it's gonna return the subject ID plus get subject ID plus subject name plus get subject name plus units plus get units.
Hi, my name is Emmanuel at Dumaos from 2ITB. So the first thing is we import java.util.arraylist, which is a resizable array, and then import java.util.iterator, so we can loop through any collection of objects, and then import java.util.list. It allows the user to access elements by their integer index and search for the elements in the list. Then import java.utilScanner. This will handle inputs from the user. And then for the main class, the contents of it is first student info, because is equals to new student. This will allow us to access student class and then object name info. Then subject sub equals to new subject. This will allow us to access subject class and an object name subs. Then scanner for string and integer, we separated it so to avoid confusion. And then a list for student and subject. List student is equal to array list student. Then list subject is equal to array list subject. We use array list because array list grows its size automatically when the new elements are added to it. Then temporary list for student and subject. Then and data type int menu, student ID, subject ID, and subject unit. Do while loop, so we can iterate a part of the program repeatedly until the specified condition is true. Then info that menu to print the menu, and then menu is equals to scan that next int. This allows to scan what the user has inputted. Switch menu, then we put the variable menu to switch between. So menu 1, create new student record. Case 1, info.id. This is from the student class that increments every time the user selects option 1. Then system.out.println, enter first name, string first name is equals to s1.next line to get the first name input from the user. Then same thing with system.out.println, enter last name, string last name s1.next line, system.out.print, enter course, string course equals to scan.next int. Then student.add new student info.get ID, first name, last name, and course. To add new student in the student list, everything that the user has inputted will be stored in the array list. Then system.out.println student information recorded. This confirms that the input is successful. Then info.line, and then break. This ends the process with in the switch statement. And then for the menu number 2, which is the create new subject record, case 2, it is basically the same as the menu 1. Then subject ID, this is from the student subject class that increments every time the user selects the option 2. Then system.out.println, enter subject name, string subject name equals to s1.next line to get the input from the user. Same thing with the system of that print line. Print enter number of units. Subject unit is equals to scan that next int to get the units inputted by the user. And then subject that add new student, subject that get subject ID, subject name, subject unit to add the user in a subject list, and everything will be stored in the array list. Then system that out the print line, subject information recorded, and then info that line, and then break. For the menu number 3, which is the to enlist a subject to a student, case 3, so first we need to ask the user which student he wants to enlist a subject. System that out that print line, enter subject ID, student ID is equal to scan that next int, and ask the user again which subject. System that out that print line, enter subject ID. Subject ID is equal to scan that next int. Then student enlist student equals to student that gets student ID -1. This line of code gets the selected index of the student, and then subject enlist subject equals to subject that gets subject ID -1. This gets the index of the selected subject. And the next is selected subject that add enlist student, adding the selected student into a temporary list. Next is selected subject that add enlist subject, adding the selected subject to a temporary list. System that out that print line subject enlisted, info that line, and then break.
I'm Maria Gabriel R. Delgado from 2ITV. This is the case for or menu 4. It will allow the user to remove a subject from a student. System that out that print enter student ID will ask the user for the valid student ID. Student ID equals scan that next int will scan the input. System that out that print enter subject ID will ask the user to enter a valid subject ID. Subject ID equals scan that next int will scan the input. Student remove 1 equals selected student that gets student ID -1 will get the index of the selected student. Subject remove 2 equals selected subject that gets subject ID -1 will get the index of the selected subject. Remove 2 that sets subject to 0, remove 2 that sets subject name to null, remove 2 that set units to 0 will remove a subject from a student. System that out that print line subject deleted will inform the user that the subject is deleted. And break, after the break it will print again the options, and in the case 5 or menu 5 will display details of a student. It will allow the user to search. Boolean found equals false, the default. System that out that print enter subject valid ID will ask the user for the valid ID of a student. Student ID equals scan that next int will scan the input. Iterator student I student equals selected student dot iterator. Iterator subject I subject equals selected subject dot iterator. This is the iterator of selected student and selected subject, and will iterate the list. While I student that has next and subject that has next, it will find a specific student. Student1 equals I student dot next. Student subject 1 equals I subject dot next. Student 1 and subject 1 is the variable of I student and I subject. If student 1 that get ID equals student ID, it will print this student and subject. It will print this selected student. If it's not found, it will record not found will be printed. Break, after the break option will be printed again. In the case 6 or menu 6, it will display all the student. I student equals selected student dot iterator. I subject equals selected subject dot iterator. It is the iterator of selected student and selected subject. While I student that has next and I subject that has next, it will repeat until the end of the list. Student 1 equals I student dot next subject 1 equals I subject dot next. System that out dot print student 1 plus subject 1. It will print all the details of all students. Menu 7 or K7, it will display the details of student enlisted in a selected subject. Found equals false. System.out.print. Enter subject valid ID. It will ask the user for a subject valid ID. Subject ID equals scan.nextInt will scan the input. iStudent equals selected student dot iterator. iSubject equals selected subject dot iterator. It is the iterator of selected student and selected subject. While iStudent dot has next and iSubject dot has next, student1 equals iStudent dot next. Subject1 equals iSubject dot next. If subject1 dot get subject ID equals subject ID, it will scan if it will scan all the students with with their valid subject ID. System.out.print student1 plus subject1, it will print all the details of student enlisted in that selected subject. If it's not found, the system.out.print record not found will appear. Break, it will print again the options. Menu 8 to terminate the program. And while menu is not equals to 8, it will do all the statements. And if the user selected 8, it will terminate the program and print goodbye.